It's November 2nd, 2023. This is Roqe. Welcome to episode 293 of Roqe. I'm Jian Ghomeshi from Toronto. Salam dostan aziz, durud bar shoma. Episode 293. If you factor in the 0.5 episodes we've been doing recently, and the entire contemporary history of Iran, which was a different set of numbers.
Right.
I mean, we're well into the 300s.
We should be over the 300s.
Be kojā rasidīm? Be hiç jab nerasidīm.
Sure we have.
Yeah.
We've got bonus content.
That's right. We got bonus content. 300 تا episode داشتیم.
That's right.
به هیچ جا هم نرسید.
بیش از 300 تا episode.
بیش از 300. Oh. Look at you. You've fucking thrown in the bish there. The bish as, yeah. I hope you're doing well wherever you're tuning in from around the world. This program is about talking to Iranians, talking to you about being Iranian, building and understanding our evolving Iranian identity, especially outside of Iran. It's for non-Iranians as well, but I wanted to say the word Iranian as many times as possible to really drive home the point. Conversations from, to, and about the Iranian diaspora. Pegah June.
That's right.
Hi, Smart Pegah.
Hello.
You know, the title of this episode is A World on Fire. An extremely uncreative... I mean, it's a...
True nonetheless.
But, right? Doesn't it feel like...
Yes, it does.
It just feels like we're just... I mean, everything is blowing up somehow, right?
It does. But we're going to try and keep it light today.
Is that what we were doing?
We're going to try, even though the episode is called...
We have the co-founder of the Center for Human Rights in Iran.
Yes.
To keep it light.
Really trying.
Hadi Ghaemi, I'm really actually happy to have him back on the show. A really eloquent speaker on Iranian affairs, particularly with respect to human rights. Had years of experience at Human Rights Watch, and now started the Center for Human Rights in Iran a few years ago. And a lot of experience in doing what he does, and a lot of perspective that comes with that. So he's coming on to talk about, I mean, we've been talking about this in our roundups and our roundtables, the recent very sad death of Armita Geravand, who the teenager who this year's another Mahsa Amini kind of case, confrontation with hijab police on a Tehran subway, ends up in a coma, brain dead, and now dead. And then the aftermath of that, the horrific sort of toying with the people of Iran around whether they can even have a funeral based on not wanting any negative publicity to get out about this regime. So the funeral is held with a whole bunch of plainclothes police there and watching things. Nasrin Sotoudeh, the famous human rights lawyer, turns up, refuses to wear a hijab, gets detained, and I think there's some violent confrontation where she's now tortured and she's back in prison. And the whole thing is a testament to how, as much as progress has been made in terms of shifting the goalposts over the last year since the most recent uprising with the killing of Mahsa Amini and the aftermath, we're still sort of in the midst of all this. In fact, one of my titles for today's show was going to be, Are We Back Where We Started? Although I thought that was too reductive in the sense that, of course, we're not. You know, there's progress has been made in lots of ways in terms of maybe even in part educating people of the world, if not the governments of the world. But sometimes it can feel that way, right? For sure. The regime in Iran now using this war, this horrific situation with Israel and Hamas to preach, I don't know, liberation, theology, which is a joke, using that as their both as their scapegoat and excuse to show their virtue, and in the meantime, carrying out extremely repressive and suppressive activities ongoing that continue to make Iran one of the most horrendous violators of human rights in the world, right?
I mean, I agree with you. I think it almost feels like one step forward, two steps back, and that's what we've been seeing and feeling for the last year and a half. But
Nasrin Sotoudeh is back in jail.
Exactly.
Another young woman is killed. I mean, it's hard not to be deflated by all this. But hopefully it's two steps forward, one step back, not the other.
What did I say it the other way around?
You said one step forward, two steps back, which would be understandable. But
yeah. Yeah, I mean, the deflation is the one thing that I definitely think everyone has felt. But I personally try to constantly remind myself that at the very least, we've had further education on what the Islamic Republic is really all about. And I'm not talking just Iranians. I'm talking non-Iranians, in fact. They've been able to see, what the Islamic Republic is like and what the atrocities that they continue to commit within the country and spreading it outside of Iran as well, as we see with...
That would be the hope. That would be the hope, although I will bring this up with Hadi Ghaemi, joining us from New York in just a little bit, that what I brought up on Monday on our bonus podcast about the foreign minister, Abdullahian, the Islamic Republic foreign minister, the guy I affectionately called a buffoon at one point last year. That guy, on CNN, the language he was using... we're going to liberate Palestine. We're for the Palestinians, all of this stuff. To the untrained, uneducated, I don't even mean uneducated. There's a lot of people, even active, so-called activists in the West, that don't know the situation in Iran, don't know what this regime is all about, are sort of parroting the talking points of the left on student campuses, etc., and might look at this guy and go, oh, he's our ally. He's our friend. He supports the Palestinian people, when... we know that the Islamic Republic of Iran does not support anyone except for its own activities and maybe Hamas and Hezbollah to carry out the revolution, the Islamic revolution.
And only to further their own activities,
Correct.
not even because they want to actually support even them.
Yeah. Not to mention anybody who, who supports Israel, etc. There's a new edict in Iran this past week. I'll put this to Hadi Ghaemi as well, although I suspect this won't surprise him or for anybody. Yeah. There's a new edict that you cannot, in Iran, express support, like presumably online or in the streets or something like that. You cannot say something positive about Israel. It will be a criminal offense.
Ridiculous.
Thought police, right? It's like,
I mean, we have them policing just about everything else.
Yeah. Some people would argue those kind of that kind of thought police stuff happens in the West now too, in a different way. But I mean, it's so Hadi Ghaemi joining us in a little bit from New York. We're going to get to all of the topics of the week. I had an interesting start to my day. I was looking forward to now. The Beatles, you know who the Beatles are, right?
Yes.
Because I know sometimes you spend so much time listening to Andy growing up.
That's right.
And I don't know.
Actually, Ebby, but yes.
Ebby, all right. That you might not know your John Lennon from your Paul McCartney, right? So there was a band called the Beatles.
Yes.
In the eyes of many Iranians, a lesser band to Pink Floyd. So these guys... had this, they're the most important band ever if you're into rock and pop music.
Right.
They existed until 1970, right? And then they put out, they all did solo records, and then John Lennon was killed in 1979, and then George Harrison tragically died about 22 years ago of cancer, I think. So there's two remaining Beatles,
right? But
they found this demo of, I don't know why I'm explaining this. If people who already know this story, if they've over the last 24 hours they've heard this, and if not, maybe they're not interested. But the point is, there's a new Beatles song, the new last Beatles song, as Sean Lennon, who's the son of John Lennon, said. And this song, so it comes out today. So they yesterday they put out this little 10-minute. I mean, I feel like a bit of a victim of the marketing here, like for sure it's a hype project, but I also I love Paul McCartney. Like I think he and Ringo, like I think I've had the chance to interview Paul McCartney a couple of times. He couldn't be nicer. He really could not have been a nicer man. And somehow, in a world full of people that we've learned to distrust, I trust Paul McCartney. Like, I think his heart is in the right place with this song. God love you, Paul. Sir Paul McCartney. So, although probably not an Arsenal fan because he's from Liverpool. But there's your... We need a bell or something.
Everyone's got flaws.
The Arsenal reference of the day. Anyway, so yesterday there was this little documentary that came out, this 10-minute thing explaining that this song is going to come out. And I think they put that out in order for people to know that the story behind this, to know that it's not fabricated somehow, and that everybody's on board. Like Yoko, John Lennon's wife, gave the demo to the Beatles, so you know that they're not exploiting John or George, you know. And
the demo, which was on cassette.
Demo was on cassette,
which is so cool.
And AI plays a role in here,
yeah,
right? Because now they've figured out. It's weird. Peter Jackson, the Lord of the Rings guy, he's the guy who helped, has figured out how to you can on an old demo on a cassette where there's a piano playing and John Lennon's voice scratchy, really hard to hear. They've learned how to use AI to separate the piano track from the vocal, so that they could use the vocal for this song. It's not the best vocal performance, but even then, that affects me because what happened to me today? I started crying.
Really?
Well, I waited for the song to come out, and then I went to my friendly neighborhood music streaming service on my computer, and I'm not going to say which one. Why promote it?
Right.
Although we are on Spotify. I went to Spotify. We're also on Apple.
We're also on Apple Podcasts.
And SoundCloud. So anyway, and Instagram and Crave, what's the other one? Castbox, yeah. So not Crave. So I went to Spotify.
Right.
I started listening to the song. I started crying for a number of reasons. Okay. One, John Lennon's voice. Just to hear his voice, that combined with the lyric. Like if you put this into perspective, two of them are dead. The Beatles' greatest band in history. They're, the ones who are alive are in their 70s now, or maybe 80s. And I think 80s actually. And there's John Lennon singing "Now and Then I'll Miss You." It's the lyrics are very emotive and moving and beautiful. And then Paul McCartney, who played bass in the Beatles. Okay. The Beatles were a band. Right. Right? And they each played instruments.
I got that point.
Oh. I just realized they're not modern talking, so you might not know these things. So Paul McCartney, you can hear he's kind of doing the Paul McCartney bass on this. I mean, for sure they're doing this intentionally. Like Ringo plays drums, and he does a very Ringo type drum fill, like do 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 do. That's a very Beatlesy. So they were kind of, we're going to make this a Beatles song. Right. Then George Harrison, who died 22 years ago, when they first found this demo in the 90s, George Harrison did a slide guitar solo part to it. They've resuscitated that. So he's on it. So all four Beatles are on the song. You can tell from my excitement that I think this is
incredible.
It's cool.
But it is. I mean, I'm not a huge Beatles fan, as you can tell by my silence here.
Because you don't understand music. Yeah, go ahead.
Fair. Yeah. But hearing this and hearing the story behind it, and actually watching that video that they put out yesterday, I was amazed at the fact that, the concept of the fact that, like you said, two of them have passed away, all four of them are on this song, the story behind the way that, John Lennon's wife handed the cassette over, they started working on this in the 90s, and then they had to abandon the project, and then now with the help of AI, they were able to do this.
Why is all of this, why does it all work? Do you know why?
Emotions.
No, because it's a good song. Because they were really, really, they were the best for how these four came together, and so what happened in the universe, what magic brought these guys together, especially Lennon and McCartney, the chief songwriters, but the other two too. I mean, George Harrison. So, I mean, it's a great song. I think it's a really great song. I have to say, it was a great song. It's a good. So anyway, I start crying, and then I was thinking about our show, and I was thinking about, we did the Pink Floyd series. This is interesting timing because, of course, earlier in the week, Matthew Perry from Friends died. Yes. And on Monday's episode, we talked about the connection that Iranians feel to the sitcom, the series, the American series Friends, and particularly to Chandler Bing. Well, they feel it to all the characters, but Chandler was a big, clearly as evidenced by, Rohan was telling me, if you go to Matthew Perry's, the late Matthew Perry's like social media or something,
Right.
and you look at the comments, there's a whole bunch of Iranian, there's like in Farsi people commenting. I mean, the entire world is like mourning this guy, and Iranians are at the forefront, of mourning a loss of a character from Friends and the actor. But I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about the Beatles, and I know, don't jump on me, especially if you're somebody who was alive in the 70s, or if you're older than me and you were alive when the Beatles were around. But I don't think the Beatles were they were known in Iran, but from all of the anecdotal evidence and all the I've done over the last few years, they definitely weren't as big as, like, say, Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
Like, you can usually go up to an Iranian and they can probably sing you or cite a Pink Floyd song. I'm not sure how many Beatles songs they can do. They can definitely tell you modern talking songs.
Well, I was gonna say, we joke about this, but that's just the reality. Is that
guy's gig is like tonight or something, wasn't it? The guy from Modern Talking,
I don't know.
one
I don't
of the
even
two
know what
members
day it is anymore.
Maybe they'll find a cassette of Modern Talking and do a new song posthumously in a few years. Anyway, so it's interesting to me to these iconic characters, one of the cast member of Friends and the Beatles, and what makes it through into the popular culture stream of the DNA of Iranian culture over the last 45 years, inside the iron gates of the Islamic Republic, that filters out some, especially for those first 20 years, for the 80s and or first half of the 90s, when nothing was kind of getting in and people had to, listen to their older brothers' Pink Floyd records and that type of thing. I don't know how big a deal it is for Iranians that there's a new Beatles song in comparison to Chandler dying.
I think Chandler still takes...
Of course.
Yeah. Especially with the conversation that we had on Monday where, the concept of using Friends to learn English and to better understand kind of the North American context and relate to them despite the fact that there's so many differences. I think those are the reasons why we've seen such an impact with Matthew Perry passing and seeing how Iranians have kind of started to talk about their...
And by the way, we posted a little thing on our Instagram to promote the episode, and it was like a picture of Matthew Perry, and it started to get more likes than any of our normal episodes. People were like, "Oh, Chandler. We weren't that interested in you guys before, but now with Chandler." So yeah, they're the new Beatles song, very, very moving. If you so happen to be inclined and you haven't heard it yet, by the time you hear this podcast, maybe you will have, and maybe you'll share my sentiments and shed a tear. Now, and I don't even know, I can't tell yet whether this song, Now and Then, this Beatles song, is going to be one that I'm going to be playing forever, that I'm going to be 2 years from now. I can't tell if the emotion of it is part of being caught up in just hearing some new material.
Right.
When Bowie died, or actually not when Bowie died, when Bowie came back with David Bowie came back with his first album in 2013 after disappearing for a few years. He'd had heart issues and he was and no one expected it, and suddenly Bowie, and I was so emotional, and I went on the air on CBC and did this whole tribute to Bowie. And I was like, this is amazing music. I still believe that's amazing music. I don't know with this Beatles song. It's hard for me to tell. Like next year, are we going to be listening back going, what a classic or not? But I feel like, it's already number one on iTunes.
Right.
It's going to be something that is going to get out there and will be played a lot. Maybe it'll be used in a movie soundtrack. And so it's already kind of an iconic song.
Well, I think
it's been out for a few hours.
Yeah. And I think it's iconic just because of the sheer fact that, two of the band members are dead.
Right.
And yet they've put this song together.
Which two members?
Paul McCartney and George Harrison.
No,
John Lennon.
Paul McCartney is not dead.
And George Harrison.
Zavunet Gozbegir. Jesus.
John Lennon and George
And who are the
Harrison.
members of Modern Talking?
I don't know.
John
really
Lennon and George Harrison. That's correct.
Yes.
So it's an early Christmas present.
Yes.
Even though Christmas is a long way away.
It's so far away. We're not even in Christmas territory yet.
And yet.
And yet, I've been hearing Christmas songs and
You were telling me about this. The Mariah Carey
Oh my gosh.
did
this
something
video.
that this is a disease in our Western
there's
capitalist society.
There's
that
actually
that
a
we're,
name
we're
for
literally
it.
2 months away from Christmas. I know it's not quite as big a deal for people who are listening to us inside Iran, but Christmas is like the I don't know, Western version of Nowruz. Like, we build up to it. We have a big Christmas,
That's right.
obviously. But it's 2 months away still. No one wants to hear these shitty Christmas songs. And yet,
Shitty Christmas.
well,
songs.
maybe not. I like the Mariah Carey song.
I like the Mariah Carey
Everyone
one
loves
too,
that song.
yeah.
But, the Christmas carols, I mean, it's a disaster. You don't want to hear that stuff for 2 months.
Well, what you were saying, there's actually a name for this disease, if you will. It's called the Christmas creep.
Okay.
And so the concept behind the Christmas creep, it comes from consumerism, and it's the concept where retailers will start as early as possible to put their merchandise out and to try.
We just had Halloween.
We just had
So
Halloween.
they spent a couple of months selling us
Candy.
Starbucks coffees that were Halloween themed.
Yes.
Right? Starbucks.
And then
And,
right as
and
soon
now
as
we're going into Christmas.
Exactly. The video that you mentioned, I want to talk about this because I thought it describes
What
this,
video did I mention?
the Mariah Carey
Oh,
video.
right. There's a video.
Yeah. So
Okay.
there's this video for anyone who hasn't seen it. There's a video of Mariah Carey, and she's in a block of ice. So she's frozen. And there's a timer above her head counting down, and it shows October 31st, 11:58 or 59 p.m. And it's just like a running clock.
Oh, I said I didn't see
And
this.
the minute that it strikes midnight, so it becomes November 1st, this ice all of a sudden cracks, and she comes out singing.
All I want for Christmas
Exactly.
is you. So you're allowed to now play that song.
You are
That's the idea.
Well, I guess if we're going based on
That's
Christmas
pretty
creep,
self-serving of Mariah Carey, who has a number one song each year because the song keeps going
it's
number
like
one.
the highest earning Christmas song ever in the history of the world.
Oh, yeah, Christmas music. Michael Bublé's Christmas album is his biggest album.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
Mariah Carey's won 3 Guinness World Records because of her Christmas album or something like that, because of how many times it's topped
gone number
charts
one.
and it's gotten number one.
Have
and whatnot.
yourself a very... I mean, really, though? It's 2 months away, right?
Yeah. There's also...
So yeah, but don't you think there's sort of a version of that with Nowruz, too?
There
By
is.
the time it's January, the preparations are afoot.
I mean-
People are looking for which shoes they're going to buy for the...
I don't know if I would say as far as January, but just because of the sheer nature of how we celebrate Nowruz and setting the half scene and having to prepare things. So, for example, if you're growing sprouts, sabzi.
Sabzeh.
Jeez, what is wrong with me today?
Sabzeh?
Sabzeh, yes. If you're
I
growing
thought that was when you have
sabzeh,
kind of brown skin. Sabzeh.
you can say that to someone. You're
Okay.
darker tone.
So it's brown skin or
it's
little
not brown skin.
sprouts.
It's your darker tone.
I thought it was like brownish skin. I like it.
Yeah.
I want to be
It's
Sabzeh.
olive tone is
looks
is
awesome.
really
Yeah, all right.
what it is.
It's a
But-
free tan. You don't have to go to the tanning place.
But what I was saying is that, with Nowruz, if you are setting up to set up your half scene, then obviously you have to prepare a couple weeks in advance. We have the whole concept of spring cleaning that's ahead of Nowruz. So, we have real reasons for actually celebrating Nowruz ahead of time. With Christmas, it's just consumerism.
That's not true.
Kind of.
Christmas, you have to, get the tree. The
How
lights,
long does it take you to set up a tree?
you have to buy gifts,
Yes.
stockings. Come on.
Actually, I read a report that says that some psychoanalysts have actually linked the early setup of Christmas decor to the declining and dire situation of current society, like today's society. So there's so much stress and anxiety that people
for
are
sure.
setting up for Christmas sooner and sooner because it brings them joy and happiness.
But I do
and-
see a theme here. You're annoyed by the Christmas stuff, right?
No, I'm not annoyed by it.
Well,
But in
what are
in
you-
my house, the rule is December 1st is when we set up Christmas stuff.
What does that mean? That's when you put the lights outside
yeah, we
the
put
house?
the lights
All right.
outside. We set up the tree.
See, I thought this was a new trend because you declared on Monday that you hate Halloween.
No, I hate Halloween as an adult. I love Halloween for kids. I love
Yep.
being at home and handing out candy.
Did you hand out candy?
I did.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I wore my badge.
Did you?
I did.
Because I feel like maybe you turned off the lights and pretended not to be home.
No, are you kidding me?
All right.
We decorated the house. It was wonderful.
I had a lot of kids this year in my house. In
Yeah.
my area, I've got a lot of young kids. And
I noticed we have some Halloween candy out in the office.
yeah, well, let me tell you what happened with we got to get to Hadi Ghaemi, but what happened with Halloween was I bought a lot of candy for the kids because I know we have a lot of kids in our area, and I put on my pirate hat.
Yeah.
That was my costume Like,
Right.
like a couple of kids actually were like, "Are you a pirate?" Like looking at me like, "Why are you just wearing the hat? Where's the rest of the outfit?" But I thought it would be festive, so I wore the hat. So I bought a whole bunch of, and I thought I'm going to buy the chocolate bars. You know, we talked about this as a kid. You know, you hate the families, the places that give you the nonsense. You know, you want
raisins.
chocolate bars. Yeah, raisins.
I hated the houses with the raisins.
Yeah, or something healthy.
Yeah.
No, we don't want that. Or even the, what are those little...
The rockets.
Rockets, yeah. The rockets.
Nobody likes the
Nobody
rockets.
wants those. You want chocolate bars.
Exactly.
But, you know, and now, I don't think we had these when we were young. I think there was like, now you can buy these packages.
I'm younger than you. What
Sorry,
do you
yeah.
mean
When I was young. I don't think we had
joking.
packages of like 100 really tiny chocolate bars. I think they were like medium sized or large, and that was the win. Now you give out these tiny little
the minis.
Minis, yeah. It's like the size of hand.
Yeah.
You know, like tiny, like really small. Anyway, so I bought a whole bunch of that stuff, and I was thinking, you know, I kind of even calculated. I figured we were going to have about 150 kids, right? So I bought like 450, the equivalent of 450 little pieces of chocolate bars, so that I could give 3 to each of the kids.
Each of the kids, right.
So then, early on, my philosophy was, let the kids choose, because I had a big bowl with all the chocolate bars in it, right? So I was like, I'll hold out the bowl in my pirate hat, right? And then the kid, I'll say, you take what you want. So like the third kid that comes up, this little snotty face, you know, privileged kid, goes, okay, and puts his 2 hands in the bowl.
Oh, wow.
And like scoops out probably 50 chocolate bars and puts them in his bag, right? So then I'm like, fuck this, these kids.
Your calculations.
The kids today, my calculations are already skewed. Now I don't have 400 left. So then from then on, I decide, well, I'm going to hand out the chocolate bars, right?
Yeah.
I will manage the chocolate bar distribution. None of these kids are just going to come take their chocolate bars. So the kids are coming, and I thought I'm being, look at me, how great I am. I started giving them, and I also didn't know, now maybe what if there's 200 kids? And I've already, the one kid took 50 of the.
So now you have to limit.
I had my calculator, I was trying to do the calculations. I got 400.
There's a kid waiting at the door, and Jian's like, hold on, let me count.
So I was like, I'll give them 2 each. Right? 2 little. So the kids are coming, and I go, okay, here's 2 for you, 2 for you. Some of them were really, oh, thank you. And then there's the parents are always there. Also, when I was a kid, the parents wouldn't accompany us because those were safer days.
Yes.
It was the 20th century. Now in the 21st century, there's the parent stands at the end of this driveway because you know, and we don't even. My area is a relatively safe area, but still, I think they're recommended to. So and then the parent says, "What do you say?" And then the kid has to say, "Thank you, Happy Halloween," you know. So then I'm giving out these 2, and then at one point I notice a kid kind of looking at me a little, you know,
like,
sideways. Yeah, exactly. Like I've got this huge bowl, and I'm only giving them 2 each, you know, because the one kid ruined it for everybody. He took 50. The Superman kid. It was a bad Superman costume too. It was a little blonde kid, a Superman kid. Anyway,
you know what I had a problem with? We had kids like.
I was gonna say to his parents, I was gonna say, "Hey, who is this? Your kid? He just took 50 of the chocolate bars." Okay, what were we gonna say?
Shaming the parents. I was gonna say we had some of like the older kids show up in our neighborhood, and they weren't even wearing costumes.
Oh no! Don't get me started on the older
kids. And I was
kids.
like. At least put something.
Don't get me started.
At least make a badge and put it around your neck.
Yeah, no. After 9 p.m. when they turn up and they're like trick or treat, and you're like, you're 20. Why?
Honestly, some of them look older than me, and
that's
I was like,
that's
whoa.
right. But then you're kind of scared too. Like take whatever you need to take. Here's the chocolate. Leave me alone.
Here's your chocolate.
Yeah, and there was one girl. I couldn't tell. She was a young woman who came in a kind of like a hijab, you know, but I think it was her costume, right? Because like the 2 kids there was 3 girls and the 2 kids on either side of her were wearing costumes, and then she was wearing a hijab. It might be that she's just religious, but it was.
But was she
young.
wearing anything else, like costume wise?
Not totally, but there's 3 kids. They're young, you know, they're probably 10 or something, and one of them is wearing a hijab. in the middle, and the other two are wearing like costumes like I'm an angel, I'm Spider-Man, like that, right?
Right.
So I guess it was the costume.
I think she just had a really creative costume and you didn't get
That
it.
maybe, but then afterwards I was gonna like, when they left, I wanted to question her. I was like, why are you wearing the hijab? Or is this a commentary on? Do you know Nasreen Sotoudeh has been? I mean, I appreciate it if you're religious, but I mean, you're young. I don't know what. Yeah. So anyway, I give out the 2 candies to the kids, and then one of the kids who's kind of looking at me sideways, you know, and I think, oh, what's up? And then I start looking in the bags. Some of these kids have full-on chocolate bars.
Yeah, like the
big chocolate
ones.
Who's giving out the big chocolate bars?
Well,
they're shaming us.
It's
so then I realized I'm actually being kind of stingy.
Yeah.
But I realized
with the minis.
Oh, just giving 2 little minis like that. Probably they walked away and they were like, "Oh,
This guy.
get a load of Gomeshi with the pirate hat." First of all, he doesn't even have a real costume on. He put a hat on, and then second of all, he gives us 2 little O. Henrys, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was left with a bunch of candy because by the time I realized I should just be giving them 3 or 4, there weren't enough kids left, you know. So
It's too late.
I have so I brought some here.
We'll end up eating it. There was some people handing out soda, like 2-liter soda bottles or something.
What?
Yeah.
Huh.
Apparently this started in the States where some guy...
Who could afford to give these full chocolate bars? That's what I want to know. And these kids, I mean,
We
with the
never got
scooping
full size like that.
Yeah, we did. So there was always the one house
Yeah, the
that
cool
would give you that,
house.
and you were just like, those people are the best. Yeah, you know. All right, listen, we have to get to Hadi Ghaemi. Let's do a quick roundup before we do, because I suspect what we're going to talk about ties in with having Hadi on the show. So you were the founder of the Center for Human Rights in Iran, and talking about the situation there. You were going to, for the roundup, I think your item today was to talk about the Islamic Republic becoming the chair of the UN Human Rights Council Social Forum.
That's right.
This is just, you can't script this stuff, right?
Honestly, I mean, I know we've talked about this. We've seen the Islamic Republic at the UN before, but this appointment actually originally came out in May. And the president of the United Nations Human Rights Council, was the one to appoint Ali Bahraini, who's the ambassador of the Islamic Republic, to this position. And so since May, we've seen different groups, different organizations, different nonprofits kind of lobbying for this decision to be overturned. And not only was it not overturned, it was strongly defended. And we saw even Joseph Borrell, who's the EU Foreign Affairs chief, put out a statement kind of saying that, this is consistent with established UN procedures and it's a matter of rotation.
Yeah.
And I mean, even if that were true, which by the way, there's a lot of speculation as to whether or not that's true. The UN Watch actually reported that the group in which Iran belongs to in this rotation of theirs has actually been in this position 4 times in the last 6 years, excluding other regions. So I don't know how true this whole rotational procedure thing is. But I mean, it's inconceivable for any official from the Islamic Republic to be at the United Nations talking about human rights. And for someone like Joseph Borrell or anyone else within the EU, the UN, any of these organizations to want to defend that is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah. And even there was an American official that, didn't they release a statement saying this is a joke or this is comic?
Yep, they did. But I mean, even that, it's on one hand, it's like you're saying, this is comic, but then on the other hand, you're also a member state who's done nothing to overturn this decision. Or
I know we say this a lot. We said it a lot last year, especially when it came to kids dying in Iran and UNICEF and all that. But it's one wants to take the UN seriously because you think it can be a really important tool. And we've had guests on who've made the argument, look, we need to activate the UN. Someone like Azadeh Rojhan in Sweden saying, well, let's get the UN, let's hold them accountable. Let's get them involved. But on the other hand, you just kind of have to at some point think, what a joke this is. There's no, how can it have any credibility? The Human Rights Council.
Exactly.
I mean, and Iran is going to be chairing this.
I mean, the Islamic Republic has Nobel Peace Prize winners behind bars. We have,
Literally.
literally.
Yeah. Literally,
We have-
the people, the two most prominent women right now are in Iran, dissidents, are behind bars. One of them, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, one of them, the Sakharov Prize winner.
Exactly. And they're going to stand at the UN and
Right.
talk about human rights. I mean, I think it's just confirming that the problem I have with this is that it confirms, despite the human rights violations that the Islamic Republic has in and of itself, they still have a place within the ecosystem of the UN due to procedure. That's the part of it that boggles my mind.
I wanted to say one thing before we get to Hadi Ghaemi. Did you see the I told you about that New York Times article yesterday. Did you look at it?
I did.
Yeah. So so the New York Times runs an article yesterday, prominent piece, and with a bizarre headline saying Iran now faces a dilemma because of the Israel-Hamas war. The dilemma being, I don't know whether to be ethical or not. It's like, really, a dilemma? But the idea was whether Iran gets involved in a war or not. The piece was written, I believe, in an extremely sort of one-sided way. The writer being conspicuously somebody we've talked about in the past, so perhaps not. And by the way, the writer being criticized in the past for being seen as cozy with, or an agent of, or somehow colluding with, or somehow soft on the regime in Iran, which this article bears out, I believe. But even more so, if a picture tells 1,000 words, there's 5 pictures with these 1,000 words, and the photos that are used in the article. First of all, this is the delta between what the Islamic Republic regime says. This is what we were trying to teach the world for many years now, and especially during the uprising of the last year. We thought we had gotten somewhere with, there's a difference between the government and the people. There's a difference between the regime and the people of Iran. Don't mix them up and don't assume they're the same, and they don't think and feel the same things. So this article, first of all, it has a picture of Abdullahian. I feel like he gets a lot of airtime these days on our show, but the foreign minister, it couldn't, I mean, it's like an 8x10 that you use outside the club when you're performing. I mean, it's a beautiful photo of this guy. The
nicest photo he's got, probably.
He's like lounging on a chair, and it's a nicely shot cover. It's kind of like, really, this is the photo that you want to run of this guy?
Yeah.
These are all decisions that get made. I mean, surely there's a photo. You don't, if you don't want to seem like you're being too subjective, you don't have to run the horrific photo of him looking like he's doing the Hitler salute or something like that. But this photo, really? So then there's that. And then there's 4 other photos accompanying this article. All of them are from inside Iran, and all of them indicating Iranians supporting Hamas and the death to Israel and the Palestinian cause, let's say. Now, there may be some people in Iran who support Hamas. There may even be people who are out there saying death to Israel, but there's a lot of people who aren't saying that.
That's right.
And there's a lot of people who either, take a humanitarian approach to this or support Israel. I mean, and to only show Iranians supporting Hamas, I mean, really, New York Times? That's what now, this is the latest thing now. We have to go back to re-educating people that not all Iranians are running around the world going, yay, Hamas, Hezbollah.
I mean, I wouldn't even go that far. The first thing that I noticed when I looked at the article was, if you took away the New York Times headline, like their logo, and if you didn't know what the article was, where it was coming from, the images alone, you would have thought this was an article in like Press TV or Press whatever, the state-sponsored online journal.
Fars TV.
Yeah, something like that, because the images are straight out of the textbook of Islamic Republic state media. I mean, all the images are exactly the type of images that we've seen, and we know the Islamic Republic wants to show people. That's what they want people to think Iran is. And if you look at any other publication or any other media outlet when they're reporting on Iran, there's so many other images that they've used. Images that, someone like me can relate to when saying, oh, okay, that's a bunch of Iranians even inside Iran. I think it was a very deliberate choice of images, for sure.
And why is that? Right? That's do we just buy into it must be that this is a way to soften the image of the regime, or to not show dissent in Iran, not show the amount that people want to get rid of this regime, or to just show the world in black and white, and this is a country of Muslims that must be opposed to anybody that isn't Muslim. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do hold the writer accountable and the editors accountable.
Absolutely.
Because what kind of that's clearly not the only.
No, it's false representation.
It is.
For sure.
It really is. And by any account, if you just and again, it reminds me of the argument. Now, let me bring this up with Hadi Ghaemi as well, but it reminds me of what I was saying about Abdullahian on CNN about the notion that, because again, if people see, we can't expect. There's a lot going on in the world. How much do you and I know about the nuances of what's happening in Ukraine and who's in charge and who the second in command is and what they represent?
Absolutely.
And we don't, right?
Yeah.
We don't know those things because we're not in the Ukrainian community. We haven't done the education. So we kind of rely on whatever media that we trust to go, okay, well, that's must be what's happening, and let me support these poor people, and that was horrible what happened there. And so if you're not invested in what's going on in Iran, and certainly if you're not Iranian, you don't have any, we can't expect you to be up to date on everything. You're looking at something like this and going, oh, okay, yeah, the Iranians are pro-Hamas people, they're all pro, and or even at the very best, they're all on the Palestinian side of the equation. Again, I mean, I'm sure many Iranians are very sympathetic, and their hearts are going out to Palestinians who've been killed in Gaza. But this is a narrative that's being put out there by the self-proclaimed newspaper of record, right? It's not some sort of organ. It's not MSNBC, the liberal network, or Fox News. This is the New York Times.
And the problem I have is that the writer is Iranian. That's the biggest problem I have with this.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Pegah.
Thank you.
See you for our bonus podcast on Monday.
Yes.
I don't think it's going to be a bonus anymore. And we just
what are we calling it now?
The Monday Roundtable. Because, but anyway, we'll figure that out.
Chat.
We'll discuss whether it's a bonus. We are coming to you on roqemedia.com. You can link to all of our platforms: Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple, a couple of these platforms where you can hear the new Beatles song. I figured they need my help promoting Beatles, an upstart kind of group.
Even though they're number one already within the last few hours.
That was the joke. Yeah, they're not an upstart. Parisa, can you explain these jokes to Pegah? Instagram, Castbox. If you'd like to see visuals with Roqe, switch over to YouTube. And if you want to see your descriptions of bulletins in English and in Persian, follow us on Telegram. You can support us by going to our Patreon page. You do that by just go to the website roqemedia.com and press the support us button. It makes a big difference to us. It's only a few bucks a month, and it really, really helps us stay alive. We appreciate those of you who have already become Roqe members, and those of you that haven't. If you're regular listeners or viewers of our program, we love you to become part of the team. The Patreon page linked to our website, roqemedia.com, where you press support us if you are so interested. All right, here we go. Let's get to our featured guest. My featured guest today is an internationally recognized Iranian-American human rights expert and the co-founder of the Center for Human Rights in Iran. Hadi Ghaemi was born and raised in Iran. He moved to the United States in 1983 and got his doctorate in physics from Boston University and served as a physics professor at the City University of New York until the year 2000. The Center for Human Rights in Iran is a prominent organization documenting human rights abuses in Iran and forming global coalitions for human rights support. Prior to his work at the CHRI, Hadi worked with Human Rights Watch, and he worked hard at addressing civil society repression issues in Iran. And right now, Mr. Hadi Ghaemi joins me from New York. Hello, sir.
Hello, Jian. Pleasure to be with you again.
Nice to have you back on the program. I actually feel bad that, I mean, this is your life, but I feel bad that whenever you come on a program like this, it's to address difficulties and atrocities and sadness in the world. But I suppose that's you're used to that at this point.
Yes, I mean, especially when you work on a country like Iran, unfortunately, it is just a constant stream of atrocities and bad news. But I hope we get a chance to talk later in the program. I actually had a very uplifting conversation this morning with a number of young girls in the city of Mashhad about how they feel about the environment, given they're the ones who are really living it. We're observing, analyzing, and trying to help as much as we can. But yes, these are very sad times, and yet I'm hoping the people on the ground will come from these disturbances stronger and more determined than ever.
I'll be sure to make that the last question, to ask you about what the uplifting conversation was you had today. We actually have some team members here from Mashhad, so this will be a welcome story to hear. Let me start with less positive news. This past week, we heard this horrible news, of course, that young Armita Geravand had died. This is the 16-year-old who had been in an altercation, as far as we know, with hijab police on a subway in Tehran. Subsequently, she hit her head. She, of course, was in a coma for a few weeks, was declared brain dead, and now has passed away. You've been posting about this and talking about this, of course. What do you think the death of Armita represents?
It really has significance on multiple fronts. First and foremost, coming almost in 1 year after the death of Mahsa Amini, I think it is a very, very big alert for Iranian women. If you remember, when Mahsa Amini was killed last year in detention, the reason she became such a symbol of the woman life freedom movement was because every Iranian woman could identify with her. Every Iranian man and woman, actually, every family who worried about their female members leaving the house. So given what happened to Mahsa, it really resonated with Iranian women, and now we again have a similar case, which is being framed or understood, at least among the general public, as very similar to Mahsa Amini's. We don't have the details. We don't want to jump into conclusions. But it is very clear that the Iranian government has been completely trying to obfuscate and not allow any transparency. And that alone is enough cause for concern, especially now that she has passed away. Yes. We believe the Iranian government doesn't want her name and face and what happened to her to be known. Her family is under tremendous pressure, and there's been absolutely zero information about what happened. If the claim of the government that this was just a regular passenger on a train who had a fall for whatever reason, not due to any kind of attack, and it was a very, very quick altercation. Whatever happened in that train cart from the videos we see, I think it had some background. Something must have happened. Some people must have followed her into that car train. It is very, very strange that a 16-year-old would have low blood pressure, just fall off, hit her head, and die. That doesn't happen. And if it really did happen, why aren't they open about it? Why aren't they bringing the medical records, letting the family and people knowledgeable to talk freely, journalists to look into it? So for now, it has, if anything, reinforced the Iranian woman's determination that if they do not continue their struggle, each and every one of them is a potential victim, like Armita and Mahsa, because these were ordinary girls who left home just to live their regular lives, and they never returned. So this is what the Iranian women want to put an end to it. And again, I want to say we don't have information, but all the circumstantial evidence points to the fact that she did not die of natural death. And the fact that there is no medical information coming out and the government going out of its way to hide the truth is all the more reason to believe that this was a major event and the government should be held accountable for it.
But here is something we do know, and I point this out with some sadness or with lament. it is not hard to notice, Hadi, that despite the many comparisons one can make to the death of the killing of Mahsa Amini, and you just made the case yourself almost exactly a year earlier, there is a difference this time in that there is no widespread international outcry. Of course, organizations like yours are taking it up, but there isn't a big global push. There isn't the uprising in the streets that there was in Iran. Not even amongst Iranians who were so mobilized in the diaspora last year. There isn't the same kind of vocal and passionate response. There's a lot of reasons for this, as we know. But why do you think? What would you put at the top of the list of what the difference is 1 year later?
Well, as you mentioned, there are a lot of reasons. The situation has changed a lot. Internationally, as we all know, the entire world is up in flames. From Ukraine to Gaza to Israel, we are seeing the international community consumed by these terrible wars that are, in a way, just starting in the region. And it's consuming many, many quarters. But I still think the case of Armita was resonating inside Iran. You're correct. There were no large-scale protests because people, I think, have learned a lesson from last year that the regime is willing to go to any extent of atrocities and killing of them to keep them out of the streets. And it doesn't mean they have given up streets. Indeed, it's the only pushback mechanism they have against the repression. But I think this time they want to come out more organized and more directed. And that means that both inside and outside the country, we need to see the emergence of not necessarily a leadership, but groups and entities that can represent these people who will come to the street and articulate their demands and have a roadmap. So I know that within Iran, people are working on it. Of course, outside Iran, people have been trying for years and continue to do so. But the most hopeful I am is the interactions happening under the surface between Iranian society and the diaspora to coordinate and this time come out in a protest movement that has more ability to really push back against the Islamic Republic. Just throwing your life on the line and getting killed right now is not going to resolve anything. What really matters, people are not on the streets, but the women especially are continue every day to break the hijab rule and push back on that. And that is frustrating the government. I think that will all come together at a time when the people in the country decide it's the appropriate moment. We cannot predict it, but the energy, the anger, and the determination to continue Mahsa revolution, to evolve it to the next stage is absolutely inside Iran. And that's what keeps me hopeful.
It's totally understandable for those inside Iran to have extreme trepidation about wanting to go out on the streets after the nature of the crackdowns we've seen over the years, including now over the last 12 months, et cetera. And so one doesn't feel responsible in saying, why aren't you out on the streets? But for those of us in the diaspora, it is deflating. I mean, there isn't the same kind of, stakes in terms of going out on the street in San Francisco or Sydney or Toronto. And to not see that kind of mobilization, do you think that in contradistinction to the much heralded unity that we were feeling at exactly this time last year as a global Iranian community, do you feel like the cleavages that emerged, or some of the divisions, some of them over silly things, some of them over longstanding different ideologies, et cetera, that emerged amongst the so-called opposition leaders and opposition peoples over the months throughout the spring and into the summer, do you think that is part of what has kind of undermined the momentum for those outside of Iran?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, look, the diaspora itself still doesn't have a very unified and strong engine that would move it forward. There is not, and no entity has, again, I want to emphasize that especially young people in Iran are not looking for the man on the white horse or woman on the white horse to come and save them. There is a very actually anti-heroic approach to political leadership. But there is no question that organization and group thinking is needed. And just like inside in the diaspora also, we have seen diffusion of all the energy that was collected and gathered last year. And no one place has been able to come and direct that energy in a way that would be representative of the large parts of diaspora. So yeah, unfortunately, it's again a question of guiding it in a collective and determined way within the framework of a collective entity. Again, there are people coming together and trying to fill that vacuum, but we do. That's what Iranian government has been really good over the years, and actually has been able to uh, constantly break down diaspora movements and pit them against each other very smartly, just as it has inside Iran prevented any networks to shape. But you're right, in the diaspora, we can be smarter and definitely have the space to move forward. I don't want to make excuses, but the bottom line is that we're not as united as we thought we were.
Exactly, and not to take anything away from those who are putting in, including some of these opposition leaders, et cetera, who are working as hard as they are. But yes, it's a concern. When we talk about the death of Armita Geravand, there's a second part to the story, which was there was a funeral held. I mean, this just gets so, if not infuriating, depressing to talk about. So there's a funeral held for Armita, at which reports say there were more plainclothes police than there were even, attendees, sort of keeping an eye on the mourners. Famous human rights lawyer Nasrin Sotoudeh was there. She gets detained, and she may have even been roughed up. What happened with Nasrin Sotoudeh at the funeral for Armita? Do we know the exact story now?
Yes, her husband has been speaking out and explaining what happened. And before I go into detention of Sotoudeh, which is very disconcerting, I just want to point out the horrific policy of Islamic Republic, especially as a religious entity. It cloaks itself in the name of religion, but the way it has behaved toward the dead and the survivors who want to have burials or rituals that are common for in this situation. We call it the denial of the right to mourn. It has happened so much. I mean, in a lot of instances, they even have stolen the body and buried it in an unknown place and only let the family know later. So it's horrific that even when the 16-year-old girl, her family wants to give her a burial, they will prevent that from happening in a proper way, or people who want to participate. So obviously there were a number of people who showed up at the funeral, including Nasrin Sotoudeh, who went there without hijab. They immediately targeted her, and with violence and beating, they took her away. And she's a very determined person. They took her to Evin prison, where she refused to put on the hijab and the garb that was required, and her resistance for hours forced them to take her to an all-woman prison somewhere else, Qarchak, where she had served before as a prisoner. But we're very worried for her because we know those first few weeks really do matter in terms of international attention. We know she has over 30 years of incarceration that they could implement. So we have actually been raising alarms with the UN and governments that they have to really advocate for her to be released now. If during these few weeks we are silent, unfortunately, there would be the potential of long-term imprisonment under the previous prosecutions she has had. What is really but sad is that two women in Iran who could really be and are the face and the driving force of this movement for years one Narges Mohammadi, who just won the Nobel Prize a few weeks ago, and now Nasrin Sotoudeh. Both of them are in jail. And I think for governments and international community, if they want to lend any helping hand to the Iranian people, the best and most prominent thing they can do is advocate for release of Narges and Nasrin.
Can I ask you, and maybe it seems counterintuitive, but and again as well, maybe it's a fool's game to try and apply logic to what the Iranian regime does, but there is usually some studied kind of idea behind what they're doing. Why would the regime keep detaining and torturing someone, like in the case of Nasrin Sotoudeh, who has become an international name? And she did win the Sakharov Prize. She does have a documentary in her name. She is somebody that people know. Wouldn't they be drawing more attention by doing that? I mean, why wouldn't they just let her go?
No, we've seen that's not their calculation. Look, almost in every kind of detentions of many, many innocent people, including dual nationals, including foreigners, including prominent people like Narges and Nasrin. The calculation of the regime is that it can withstand the international blowback and can resist it. And it's more fearful of these people becoming active as social, as guidance for the larger society. Having them outside to them is terrifying. So I think with regard to Nasrin, actually, they were looking for an excuse this entire past year. She had been very careful. She had been out for a couple of years on medical furlough. She does suffer from medical conditions that she did not want to go back to prison. But obviously someone like her is eventually going to be part of this very public movement. And this was a very proper thing to come out to a burial and a funeral. It should not have been such a high-risk moment, but I think the regime was actually looking for any excuse to put her back in prison. And now the question is, will it pay enough of a price in terms of international pressure, which I think it can happen, especially with regard to the recent attentions to the movement, that then they would be forced to release her. So I think the regime is really testing the will of the international community and the focus of it. Again, we know the international community also consumed with the war in Gaza and the humanitarian catastrophe unfolding there. So the regime hopes to get away with it, and it's the job of organizations and movements like us to make sure that we do everything we can to bring about that pressure for her release. Otherwise, the regime has won.
In terms of what the regime is doing, in September, Hadi, you did an interview on NPR, at least you were quoted on NPR, talking about the ongoing and brutal crackdown on dissent by the regime in the Islamic Republic. And you said the repression has entered a new phase. What is that new phase in your view?
Well, that new phase is probably best described by what international women's rights campaigners have been framing as gender apartheid. In case of Afghanistan and Iran, they want the international law to define the crime of apartheid beyond racial apartheid, which is the most common one we're familiar with, especially in case of South Africa. That now what we're seeing and have been seeing in places like Afghanistan and Iran are collective punishments of women and are a form of a gender apartheid. That's the new phase I'm seeing, with the determination to go after the very large segment of society, not just dissidents, not just activists, not just people who threaten their power, but the entire society by punishing anyone who does not wear the hijab. They will take their jobs away, deny them social services, close their bank accounts, kick them out of universities. All of that already happening. Actually, just today, the UN Secretary General released his annual report on human rights in Iran and publicly stated that he's very concerned about all the Iranian actresses who have been banned from performing or making any more movies or basically doing their work due to their refusal to wear hijab over the last year or their public statements against it. So that new phase is this collective punishment that is going to go way beyond imprisonment and really make life of people on a daily basis not sustainable. I mean, to not be able to work, have health care, have a bank account, driver's license. These are very, very serious punishments that are targeting a very large segment of the society.
On that note, and notwithstanding the story you're going to tell us in a few minutes at the end about what you heard from the girls in Mashhad today, but you know, the name of this episode is "Are We Back Where We Started?" And we've tended to try and drive the conversation around look at the progress that has been made over the last year due to this uprising. We did an episode in the beginning of mid-September. That was the 1 year anniversary of the killing of Mahsa Amini. We brought 15 prominent guests on. They all said, "No, look at how far things have changed. We've made a big dent. We've things have gone a long way." On the other hand, the repression is greater than it's ever been. The regime is still in place. People like Nasreen are still getting arrested. People like Armita are still being tragically killed. The regime seems to have solidified its relationship with countries in the region around it. It's got the pipelines of China and Russia. Can we, at this point, actually say that we've made progress? That the Iranian people and those in the diaspora who so passionately wanted to see this uprising as a movement that is making progress, can we actually say we've made that progress at this point?
Yes, I absolutely believe we have. And I want to note something very common I hear from inside Iran, which is that this is a marathon, not a short distance race, first of all. And second of all, the biggest accomplishment that happened in my mind, in my framework of looking at Iran, is the fact that between September and January of last year, when we had hundreds of thousands all over the country in the streets, there was a very important development happened because, you know, Iran is a closed society. There is no free media, no freedom of expression. So people around the country don't know what is the collective thinking. There is no way to discuss the domestic situation among themselves, even in private.
Right.
And of course, you know, it's a big country of 88 million people. What happened was suddenly we realized that a large, very large segment of the society, according to some polls conducted by Gaman Institute, as many as 80% of the population is rejecting the Islamic Republic wholeheartedly, is no longer saying they have to change this or they have to change that. The regime change mentality, I think that was the biggest accomplishment of the movement, that people found each other.
Yes.
And heard each other thinking the same way, chanting the same way, having the same attitude toward why the Islamic Republic should go. That is huge, a huge awakening of the social and political consciousness. Now, none of us are in Iran. The media doesn't get to travel. There are no independent observers there to give the fabric of the society. So I think the other accomplishment I understand is just from talking to young women, especially 16 to 25-year-olds in Iran. They're very hopeful and they're going out without hijab. I mean, it may be a new phase of repression and gender apartheid, but it's being resisted wholeheartedly. And the number of young women and middle-aged women and all kinds who refuse to observe the hijab, and they know they may lose their life over it, but it has become their major vehicle. In that sense, it's a progress, a strategic. Technically, we have not figured out how to translate that into a situation where the government has to keep stepping back. I don't think the government has stepped forward much. Actually, the wounds are open. It has failed. Any government that finds a large portion of its people against it, particularly because of killing children or such atrocities, after so many months may try to come back with some kind of a reconciliatory move. to bring back
Yeah.
at least 10,
Yeah.
20% of that pop. We see none of that in Iran. So for me, the lines haven't moved, but the social consciousness and the collective confidence of the people is a sign of progress. And the fact that everybody inside and outside, at least underground, talking about a roadmap or a plan for getting rid of Islamic Republic is something we simply did not have. We weren't sure if the majority of Iranians want the regime to go so strongly. So having realized that and themselves realizing that, to me, in this marathon is a step forward.
It's an excellent, excellent point. And a good reminder. The consolidation of the notion that the regime must go. No more blurriness around reform or not reform or anything like that. Now, that is the new orthodoxy is regime must go. Although that is the case for Iranians, I don't necessarily know that that's the case for the rest of the world in the way they see Iran, unfortunately. And I mean, we've talked about that in terms of at least pre October 7th and the latest episodes and Iran's involvement in with the Israel and Hamas, etc. We talked about the potential for the Biden administration working around trying to develop a new nuclear deal and some kind of rapprochement and this type of thing. So so not everybody's heard the message that the regime must go that Iranians seem to feel. On that note, there's something that I talked about on our program on Monday that I just want to put your way and see if you have any thoughts on it. It's very concerning to me the way the regime, the Islamic Republic regime, is potentially seeing an opportunity in this Israel. Well, I'm seeing many opportunities in this Israel Hamas in this horrible situation and now war that's going on. The foreign minister Amir Abdullahian was on CNN again this past weekend. They seem to like him. They've had him on a couple of times. And it's always a concern because he's just sort of spouting nonsense that doesn't always get fact-checked. The interviewer did a pretty good job, but I noticed that he was very much on message about the liberation of Palestine and the Palestinian people against the imperialists. And it occurred to me that, and wherever the Iranian people wherever their affections or their support may be or solidarity, whether it's with Israel or the desperately feeling bad for the people in Gaza right now or whatever it is, it occurred to me that for people who aren't super engaged, for non-Iranians maybe who don't know who this guy is and what the regime is capable of, they might, and if they are sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, like a lot of students on campuses, left-wing students in North America, they may watch this guy and go, oh, he's an ally. Listen to him. He's talking about freedom and liberation, and there's our guy. I guess the regime is our friend. How do we contend with that?
Yes, it's very difficult. But let me first just say, going back to whether the international community heard the message from the movement last year or not, and all the interactions that governments have with the Iranian government is very disheartening, given that it seems to ignore the Iranian people's plight most of the time. But the international community itself, I see it on one hand are governments and power centers and militaries, the centers of hard power. And then there is the rest of us, which is the media and experts and cultural institutions and non-governmental entities. And on that front, actually, I think the movement has remained alive just by the recognition that the Nobel Committee gave to Narges Mohammadi. You know, that to me competes and may not appear as powerful as Iran rebuilding its relationship diplomatically with Saudi Arabia before these events, or other steps that seem to bring it back to the fold of the governments in the region and even in the West. But let's remember that governments are always going to pursue their own interests, whereas the rest of us are going to have more of a moral compass and be more human than just be focused on hard power. So on that front, there are still recognitions of what Iranian people want. But with regard to what you're saying, that the average Western citizen who may be sympathetic to Palestinians suddenly see Iran or Iranian officials as reasonable supporters of their cause. I hope that's not the case, but you're right. A simple-minded person may look at someone like Abdullahian speaking perfect English on CNN and say, "Oh, he's in my camp, and I'm gonna, count him as an ally." That is really misguided because not Hamas, not Hezbollah, not the Iranian government, none of these entities as political entities are going to have much respect for basic human freedoms and human life. And unfortunately, the Palestinian issue is so complex that we see these people are using it for their advancement of their own political and military goals. And we have to explain to people that actually this government, what it does to its own people should be the measure of judging it, not what it says about Palestinians or the war in Gaza.
The regime makes no secret of its anti-Israel stance. There were reports in the last couple of days of a new edict where any expressed support of Israel by Iranian citizens inside Iran will now be considered a criminal offense. This is real thought police stuff. Does this surprise you?
No, not at all. I mean, the regime has used propaganda against Israel and pretty much repressed any discussion of Israel as a nation, its existence. We know on international forums they deny the existence of the country. So it has already been a crime, or the space hasn't existed for saying anything that would be critical of their policies in the region. And now during this war, I think they're just grandstanding. I mean, Iranians are understanding. Iranians have been chanting for 25 years. And I do not want to say they don't have sympathy for what's happening in Gaza.
Yeah.
But they have been rejecting their government's emphasis on supporting groups like Hezbollah and Hamas for 25 years in the street when they say it is not Hamas, it's not Hezbollah, my main issue, it's, our lives right here. So, but the regime's afraid of its policies being challenged, not in terms of Iranians not supporting Palestinians, but in terms of not supporting the regime in the way that it pretends to be supporting Palestinians. Yeah. Yeah. And it needs to be explained for the general public.
Yeah, I was disappointed to see there was an article in the New York Times yesterday, and it was a sort of strange article about Iran faces a dilemma about whether to go to war or not. The way it was written was very strange. Perhaps not that strange if you know who it was written by. But the photos, they only used photos from inside Iran that were that were marches in support of Hamas and Palestine, and which I thought was incredibly misleading. Again, for the average person watching the New York Times, looking at the New York Times, they go, "Oh, so the 90 million Iranian people, are all on one side of this thing and all oppose Israel and all of that." And it's, by any measure, it's a lot more nuanced than that. But this seems to be the Western narrative.
Yeah, and it goes back to the fact that, again, when someone looks at Iran, it's very common to just look at the government and its policies, and not the people, and not the culture, and not what the social fabric is. And part of it, again, is that none of us are there. Nobody's on the ground. I'm sure that if we were in the ground, my understanding over the years is that majority of the people do want the Palestinian people to be free and be able to live decent lives and not be in constant crisis. But at the same time, they do not see that support of groups like Hezbollah or Hamas helps that cause. And as we can see, if anything, my biggest criticism of Iranian government's policies in the region is that, especially with regard to Palestinians, is that they have killed all venues or helped to close all venues for political solutions, and have made And I must say, almost all political actors in the region and beyond who are involved have been setting themselves up for a military solution, which does not exist and only results in disaster and loss of life.
It is always an education and speaking with you, and I'm so grateful for the time you've given us today. I know it's a very, very busy time for you, and you're quite in demand. Before I let you go, you had an uplifting phone call today. What was it?
Yes, so as I mentioned, one of the biggest shortcomings of everybody working, talking, or looking at Iran from any position is that none of us are inside the country, and we don't really hear what goes on in detail there. We don't observe it. We don't have tangible sense of where the society is. So one of the things we try to do is constantly find, through our networks, large groups of ordinary people to talk to. And today we were fortunate to be able to hear about what's happening in the city of Mashhad in general, and at least in one quarter where there are people, musicians and artists and cultural people who have classes for teenagers and young people. They teach them voice lessons, they teach them painting, actually a lot of this kind of activities happen in the country, in the private homes. So I was hearing from a teacher and students engaged in this, that how these 16, 17-year-old girls are so fearless, and they say they will not wear the hijab because they don't want to go back to be the person they were, which was subjugated and repressed. And when their teachers brings up Armita or the dangers of, this could get you killed, first of all, they're very happy to be engaged in a artistic or singing activity, uplifting activities. And they say that I'm ready to give up my life so that life can resume in this country. Let's remember that the biggest demand young people were saying on the streets when interviewed was one phrase: I want a normal life. Yeah. A normal life means to be able to feel happiness based on your own terms. Yeah. And live it with actions and activities that make you happy. So they were like, I will not wear the hijab, and we're uplifted, we're optimistic. Even if we lose our life, it's for the purpose of restoring life to our community. And actually, they were telling us that you guys also don't be too depressed. We know that everything is very sad, but we're going to make sure that on a daily basis, we find a reason for joy. And this singing, this coming to this class, not wearing the hijab, all of these things are actions that kept them going, and they're not giving it up.
That's amazing.
That was very interesting, talking to people who are actually experiencing the most horrific aspects of this government's policies. And yet they have decided, through remaining happy, hopeful, and actively making themselves and people around themselves happy.
Not only that, Hadi Jian, they were born into this yes. Islamic Republic, right? They don't personally remember a time that was any different, and yet they have the tools to know that this is wrong and that they want to create change. It's remarkable.
Yeah, and they're rejecting it. So actually, I have a lot of hope in the 16 to 25-year-old segment of the society who were the so-called Generation Z, and they were in front of the movement. And it was not just one, a special moment for them. This has become the cause of their life, it seems like. And just by taking off the hijab and engaging in activities the government disapproves of, at least on a daily basis, they're keeping it alive.
Thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you, Jian. It was a pleasure talking to you as always.
Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Take good care. Bye-bye.
That's Hadi Ghaemi in New York. Always good to talk to him. This is Full Time for Roqe for today. For all things Roqe related, including our back episodes, our videos, all of our content, roqemedia.com is the website. roqemedia.com. Well, you can also support us by pressing the Support Us button. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together. Super Parisa, smart Pegah, talented Anahita, savvy Rohan, bearded Omid, and methodical Kabe. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Do subscribe if you've not done so already on any or all of our platforms. Find me on Instagram at Jian Gomeshi. And as ever, Mizun Bashi.